My son came in the other day and he says, this thing's gonna be a work of art when you're done. I hadn't really been considering it in that light because very little that I do, at least in my mind, is a work of art. We're always our own worst critics. But so now I have to really try to make this thing really pretty, which I was kind of doing anyways, but I wasn't too worried about it. Now I am. So I'm going to do my best to like Da Vinci on this thing, you know, a little Michelangelo going on, but it's probably going to turn out more like an Escher. All right, hit or miss on this project. It's winter time, so it's cold, and I can't do any fiberglass work really. I'm working on repairing this side where I got it uneven. It's got it pretty much evened out now. I just need to replace the runner along the side. But what I'm looking at is installing the tubes for the fly rods to go in. So I've got a couple of pieces of PVC, and I've flared the end here, and those are going to go somewhere in here, right along the edge. I'm probably going to end up putting one right on top here of this. So I'm going to end up drilling a hole right through this piece that I installed, and installing that right there, and then maybe one below. Because the rods, I don't want them to bend too much going through, but if I have a support on that end for them, then I can give them a little bit of arc, and I can probably actually just two rods side by side right here in this piece. So I'll have the piece that goes in here, we'll support the rods in the middle, and then I'll have probably two tubes side by side here, I think, that will hold the tips of these rods. I was going to originally do one on both sides, but I think it's going to be just two on one side because that's where all the controls and all the stuff goes. I'm not sure why this hole saw is not cutting as well as it should. Wow.
Wow.
I just shot it out there like a bullet. All right.
Ow.
So that's one. It's there. The second one goes here. Need to flare this one still, I guess. That. And the rod holders.
Nice.
That'd be good. All right. I'm going to try and give you a quick rundown on what I'm working on here on this side of the boat. I want my rod holders here. On this side, I want to be able to hold two rods here, and then I've got on the grab bar itself, I've got a couple more vertical rod holders, so I'll be able to have at least 4 rods on the boat. I might end up putting rod holders elsewhere, but I'll just use the standard like store-bought bolt-on ones for that, probably. Basically, I've got 2 9-foot rods here, and you can see that right now they're stacked, basically. This lower rod, that's the total depth the rods will go in at the current setup, although I think I'm going to change that. And this other one is just pulled out a little bit. And then it comes over to here, and I've got this support to support the rods, and they're parallel here, and then they come down here. And the original plan was to have the rod holder vertically, so the other one would be right in here, but it would have forced me to cut this part down deeper. So in this case, I'm going to keep the rod holders, I put them side by side so that I don't have to weaken this. And then when I'm fishing, then this rod will be the in-use rod, and then I'll just stack the other one in the back so I don't get caught on it or tangled on it. And that should keep it mostly out of the way. And then you can see they come all the way back here, and I'm probably going to have to change this because right now the rod is hitting the back here against this panel. I'm probably going to drill through here and run these tubes all the way through to out to the outside, and then I'll have this extra space to be able to put the rod tips out through that hole. And then the deck itself covers about like that, so it'll cover the rod tips, and they'll be safe under that deck thing without getting damaged. So that's basically what I'm working on now. It's finally warmed up enough that I can work on my boat again, which is very nice because it's been sitting in my garage taking up space and gathering junk for months because any extra spot gathers junk. So now we're working on, we got the rod holders in that side, or the tubes for the rod holders, and on this side I want to have a tube for wiring. I'm going to run I need 12-volt wiring both front and back for lights and motor starter and things like that. So this pipe here, originally I was going to run it down the bottom of this channel, but if I do, it'll gather junk like leaves and things like that down in there, and so I don't want that. So I'm just going to run it and make it a lot easier for me if I run this pipe basically right through this spot here, and then the 12 volts, the battery's probably going to end up here or in the front, I'm not sure which yet, but then I can run some heavy 12-volt wires through this that'll come out here and go to the starter for the motor, and then over here at this point is where my grab bar is going to be with my controls, with all my switches and everything. So this pipe will go It'll go through that piece there, it'll go through here, and then I'm gonna have a T, and then there'll be like a flexible connector between the pipe and my control box, and then this will run back up to the front and go through, and then I'll have power to the front of the boat. So that's what we're gonna work on now. So that should go. There. Perfect. Perfect. Jeez. That could have been smoother. Oh well. I'll just fill it. I'll fill that hole in with epoxy. Won't matter. My glass over it anyways. So that'll go there. This will come through. Like that. About like that. And then I'll put a T right here behind this, and that's where the wire will come out for the grab handle. Sweet. I'm gonna mix up some epoxy. We're gonna glue this into place, and then we need to get on to glassing the front pieces that I haven't glassed yet. I'm really trying to get this project done fairly quickly here because it's summertime now and I want to use it. So here's kind of a quick tip for you on these. I've just finished laying in these beads here, and I've been sanding on them a little bit here, but I realized there's a couple things to talk about. For one thing, always use your dust mask when you can. There is fiberglass in this mess, obviously, because that's what we're doing. Way to state the obvious. But I've used thickened epoxy to lay beads into these, and they're probably going to need a second bead in order to get them smooth enough to put the glass over them and to tie this all in with unthickened epoxy. But just a couple of tips here. For one thing, it's still a little bit tacky. I can kind of dent it with my fingernail, and I found that, at least for hand sanding, use a heavy sandpaper when it's just a little tacky, and it is a lot easier to sand. And once it hardens up, this stuff is pretty darn hard, and it takes a lot more effort to sand it down. So some heavy sandpaper and maybe a chisel, you can carve it off really easily when it's still tacky in the big clumps. And then I did have this piece of just soft foam from something. I think it was a packaging foam of some sort. But I've kind of rounded the end of it here, and I can wrap my sandpaper around it and pull it on tight, and it gives me a nice radius on the sandpaper. Hopefully you guys can see that. And it allows me to sand these corners more smoothly. That's what it needs to look like. Nice clean beads. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but I'm getting it down. I'm figuring out the consistency on this stuff. So.